He requested by name a number of A&M new graduates. So as we were operating past Manila, after we'd captured Manila, and this airborne outfit recaptured the island, Corregidor. A bunch of our Aggies, I was too busy to go, but the first muster, or sort of muster, was held during that time, right after the recapture, as I recall.
And later on, there was one in '46 where a lot of
Went
Aggies
back,
went
yeah.
back. Maybe express what, with your career in attaining Major General, how did A&M play into that, your training that you got there? Do you think that?
Well, I think A&M gave me a good start, and it stood me in good stead. And for principles and for qualification, I was ready as a lieutenant to get started, you know. I didn't cover my other assignments. I could hit them off real quick. When I came back from War II, President Gib Gilchrist came up to the Pentagon. I'd just been assigned up there and requested, I think, 3 or 4 fairly recent graduates from A&M to be assigned down there to the military department to get the Corps reestablished. And I was one of them. And I saw things at A&M a little differently from that perspective, but it was a good experience. I was in charge of instruction at Bryan Field at the annex when they isolated the freshmen out there. I got a lot of satisfaction out of working with those fish. They were good soldiers and good fish. And by the way, C.C. Taylor, who pushed this book, was in that class. And one day, Fish A.D. Martin and his buddy came to me. I was living in the old hospital out there at Bryan Field. I had a little apartment there, and said, "Sir, we would like to start a drill team. Can we do that?" I said, "Why not?" And they said, we can do it. We've had the experience in high school, and they did it. All we did, I and the commandant's office, was get the equipment for them. And they did a splendid job, as you know. The first public performance was at spring football game, and when they marched on at the half, they were booed. When they marched off, they got an ovation.
So that was the beginning of the fish drill team.
That's the beginning.
Wow.
And gosh, how many times have they won national championships?
Most of the time, yeah, and they're still.
They came up to Washington when I was there, continuing the march here. I went from A&M to Venezuela on training mission. We had the Army training mission there. 1949 is when I reported. After World War I, the German Army was disbanded almost, and many of those officers went to South America to seek jobs with military forces down there. And we didn't want that to happen after World War II, so the U.S. made a treaty with, I think, every one of the South American countries to put a mission down there to help them modernize and so forth. And that's what I was there for. Went to the first parade, and the troops, when they came to the reviewing stand, goose-stepped. The German influence was very, very positive there. But we were very positive in our achievements over the next year. Then I went to Command and Staff College, married at the Pentagon, where I was an Indian, and that Army staff, and went from one pack of cigarettes to 2.5, and by the way, one of the great Aggie officers was Jim Hollingsworth. And he and I were Indians together, lieutenant colonels together there in the Pentagon and working together. We were classmates at the Army War College, which we went to right after that assignment. Best year I had in the Army. And then we were.
Was he call sign Danger One? Was that? Isn't that his?
I think that was in
when he was
in Vietnam, and we were assistant division commanders. I and he in the 1st Infantry Division, me in the 1st Cavalry Division, and then he took off and left me. But he is a awfully fine soldier. From the War College, I was assigned as Army attaché to the embassy in Belgrade, Yugoslavia. And when they told me before I left the War College that I wanted that job, I went to my cohorts in the college and said, "How do you get out of this?" And they said, "You probably can't, but it sure won't help you to try." And the reason I wanted to get out of it, in Venezuela, I came to know the colonel who was a military attaché there, and he was just a friendly messenger. I mean, there's no problems, you know. That's the way it looked to me, and I didn't want that. But I got into Yugoslavia. It was one of the most interesting jobs I ever had, because I did have a job. I was an accredited spy in reality. I had a small staff. We bordered 4 communist countries, lived in a communist country, traveled in all of them except Hungary wouldn't let me in. No, Albania wouldn't let me in either. I think there were 5. Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, and Albania.
And when was that?
That was 1959 to 61,
Okay.
or 60. 61, 2 years.
Right in the
But I
middle.
went to language school for a year, and I went to strategic intelligence school.
Right in the middle of the Cold War.
Yeah, and it's very interesting.
Hang on just one second, I'm gonna change tapes. Can I get you to hand me that black bag to your right?
The 50th anniversary of the legislation that allowed women to attend A&M is coming up in a couple of years, and so it might be kind of interesting to have.
No, I'm all for it now, but it was hard at the time. As a matter of fact, I've had a granddaughter graduate down there, and she's just doing great.
Well, I'm a beneficiary of the legislation as well, so.
By the way, you didn't ask me, but my wife's dad was a graduate of A&M. My oldest brother, I am. Our 2 sons, one graduated, one didn't. And 3 grandsons and a granddaughter.
Wow, quite a
Since-
family legacy.
And
And-
only
and
one
your-
remaining down
And
there.
your father-in-law was class of
06.
06.
1906.
1906. And I know you have a grandson on Corps staff now, right?
Yeah, we're very proud of Ron.
Is class of 11 or 12?
Be 12.
12.
Yeah, he just loves the Cadet Corps, and he wants to do it all. He's Rudders Rangers, and he's gone to airborne school, and I don't know what all, but he's doing fine.
Let's go back just a second to that spy thing a little bit. Can you tell us a little more?
Well,
about that?
you're accredited diplomatically, and the Yugoslav government and army, we had very good relations with them because, yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because I want to clarify that statement. The Soviet Union, you know, took in Yugoslavia at the end of the war. Yugoslavia in 1948 says, we've had enough of you guys, and they seceded. And to keep the Soviet Union from taking them back by force, we put a mission in there and equipped them with a complete armored corps. And that corps was positioned in the most likely avenue of approach from the east to Europe. And so that's very significant. And we saved their skin, so they were good at us. I could travel freely. I had to tell them where, when, and where. I could travel freely, but I couldn't go on a military installation, nor could I go within, I think it's 10 minutes of the, 10 kilometers of the border without specific authority. So we traveled around and kept up with what's going on when these outfits are out of garrison, you know, and so forth. And it was very interesting, the relations with particularly the Soviet attaché. And I've got to tell you one story. I became a very close friend with Colonel Todasevich, who was, he was a combat officer, infantryman, and most of those attachés from the east, from the Soviet bloc, were political officers, you know, and they a lot of difference. Anyway, so the Yugoslav army every quarter set up something for all the attachés to do together. They were not going to see this separation like we had in most of the countries of the world. The East on one side and the West on the other, not communicating with each other. Is that one of my favorite mementos? Anyway, every time we'd have a national holiday that we all celebrated, we'd go to the embassy of the country that's having their national day, and so we saw a lot of each other socially. And the Soviet bloc guys would show up, and they always had 2 or 3 points to make, and instructed points. I was never instructed on any issue. So Tarasevich and I would get in a discussion. I had gone to the language school to learn the language. You had to have the Yugoslav language. They couldn't speak English in those days. And about 2 minutes into the discussion, I'd get into an area where you'd have to stop. So, I mean, he couldn't speak beyond a certain point without getting security problems. So we became contestants. One event that they planned for us was a shooting match for all attachés to compete. They had an Olympics pistol, 22 rifle, and service rifle. And they had an Olympic class shooting set up there. And so we had Army, Navy, and Air Force attachés. And we teamed up, and there was a big luncheon at the conclusion. And as we assembled for lunch, I sat by Tarasevich. The Yugoslav officer came in just winding up the scoring. And the U.S. attachés had won all 3 places in all 3 events. Well, President Kennedy and and Khrushchev had just had that blow up in Vienna, and left very unfriendly. And Tarasevich turned to me and said, "I compliment you. You are wonderful with the small arms, but we're great with our rockets."
They were ahead of us for a while on that.
They were.
Caught up.
And Khrushchev was threatening President Kennedy with his rockets.
Was that when he took his shoe off and beat it on the
No, he was at the UN when he did that. He was visiting the U.S. And by the way, he toured the whole U.S., you know, and had a great time apparently. And I was invited to the Russian embassy to Soviet embassy. I call it Russian now. Soviet embassy to see the film of his trip, and it was not friendly. He said friendly things while he was here, but it was not friendly on the film. The recorded comments.
Well,
Okay, from there I go, come back. I'm assigned to the Second Infantry Division at Fort Benning as executive of the Division Artillery, and then we got into that crisis in Berlin, and they were ordered to get rid of all of us who were not deployable. So they sent me, reassigned me like a rabbit to a briar patch to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which is the home of artillery, you know. And there I was in command of the Combat Developments Command, artillery, and then commanded a group and then a brigade there for a couple of years. And from there I went to the Experimental Air Mobile Division, and you know the story from there. After Vietnam, I was again assigned to Washington, and I was given my first job in logistics as Assistant Director of Research and Development at the Materiel Command. And then my nomination for promotion to Major General came in after I'd been there only about 6 months. And so then I moved over as Deputy Commander of the Combat Developments Command. And wasn't there too long until General Westmoreland had come in to take over his Chief of Staff's job, and General Palmer his deputy, and of course he was my boss in Vietnam, and I don't know why, but they pulled me out of there and made me Chief of Legislative Liaison for the Army. The only time I've ever had 2 commanders at one time, but my job read I would be responsible to the Secretary of the Army and responsive to Chief of Staff. Well, there wasn't much difference there. But it wasn't a problem. We had some very interesting experiences there. I had a staff of 100, a colonel in each of the Senate and the House. I don't know, we were very, very busy. And I came away from that experience with an enlarged respect for the system. You know, the Army always complained about the Congress because they're so slow. But when you get involved and see how it's working, it usually works out all right. It hasn't recently like it did then, but when it comes to national security, I have to compare the Congress when I was there and today. 60% of the members when I was there had worn the uniform.
veterans.
And it's about 20% now.
So that.
So that's where I retired from.
And when was that? When-
January 1st, 1971.
Okay. And since then, you've been.
Came home, built this home inside of the old home, and I have a half section of land here. I had cattle, sold them in '06 during that drought period, but mainly because I was getting so senior that I didn't want to handle those feed bags, you know. You can't get occasional help around here anymore. But now I just operate 60 acres of meadows, and I'm in game projects, wildlife projects. We've got a lot of deer here, for example.
They were gone for a long time, and they're all back.
Yeah.
Tell us briefly about your. Wasn't there a movie filmed here on your property?
Yes, the original movie State Fair was filmed here.
Who starred in that? Who's
Gosh.
was
These
Pat
names.
Boone
Pat Boone was the male star, and Ann Margaret was one of the stars, and Tiffany somebody. Anyway, our home was Pat Boone's home. And the movie opens with him driving up to that house. That created so much excitement around here, you know. And I was in Venezuela at the time, so I didn't see it personally. But I think the main local star, they had a lot of extras from here, but the main local star was our old horse Dick. somehow they got him into a lot of the
was in
scene.
movie. Well, can you, I guess maybe for some of the younger Aggies who are going to see you in this video, just maybe tell them what it's like to be an Aggie and why A&M is such an important, was so important in your life and what it means to you.
Well, it's A&M sticks with you, and that's still the case. I observe. I think it gives you a basis to start ahead wherever you go after you graduate. I think the tradition is wholesome and good, and I'm surprised that this vast majority of civilians have preserved those traditions as well as they have, given that. But it's the brotherhood too, and now we have this act